My name is Sabrina Carter. I'm 29 years old. And I learned something this Christmas that I wouldn't wish on anyone. The cruelest sentences are often said in the most ordinary voices, like they're discussing grocery coupons, not your existence. It was December 18th in the ranch house in suburban Phoenix that I had helped buy, but had never truly belonged in. The kitchen smelled like sweet and sour sauce and cold rice. I was organizing takeout containers like order could fix something inside me, stacking leftover Chinese food from P.F. Chang's into neat rows in the fridge, wiping down a spotless counter, pretending the tightness in my chest was just heartburn. The living room door was slightly open. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. God, I wish I hadn't. My father's voice drifted through, low and bitter, like a man complaining about bad traffic. Honestly, he said, the greatest gift this year would be if she just died. My hands froze mid-stack. I stared at the container of orange chicken like it had turned to poison. Then Brenda's voice followed, light, almost amused, like she was commenting on the weather. You said it, she replied, not me. The silence after that was worse than the words. Because I waited. I actually waited, like some stupid, hopeful part of me still believed he'd laugh and say he was joking. My father, my only parent left. The man who held my hand at my mom's funeral 2 years ago, who cried and begged me to move back in because he couldn't stand the empty house alone. But he didn't laugh. He sighed, heavy and irritated. It's exhausting having her here all the time, he said. We can't keep doing this. I pressed my palm against the granite countertop to steady myself. It was cold and solid. My life, apparently, was neither. Brenda gave her own weary sigh, like I was a broken appliance they were forced to keep until it finally stopped working. She's not going anywhere anytime soon, she said. Guess we'll just have to deal with it until then. Deal with it, like I was a stain. I backed away from the door before I screamed or cried or collapsed right there on the tile floor. My mother had picked out before cancer stole her voice and then her body. My legs barely carried me up the stairs. The guest room. My room. The one they let me move into after Mom died. The one with beige walls and no personal touches allowed, because Brenda said it didn't match her farmhouse aesthetic. I sat on the edge of the fold-out couch, staring at nothing until my vision blurred. My fingers found the notebook I kept in the nightstand drawer, the one with grocery lists and reminders to refill my anxiety medication. I flipped to a blank page and wrote it down, word for word, like evidence. The greatest gift this year would be if she just died. I read it again, then again, trying to convince myself I'd misheard. But I hadn't. The ache didn't come with tears. It came hollow, spreading through my chest and settling into my bones like cold water. I looked around my cramped space. The single dresser, the suitcase I hadn't touched since moving in 18 months ago, the stack of photo albums in the corner I wasn't allowed to display because they made the room look cluttered. It hit me then, sharp and humiliating, that I wasn't living here. I was being stored. And the worst part? I had paid for the storage unit. 2 years ago, when Dad called me sobbing after Mom's funeral, saying he couldn't afford the mortgage payments on his teacher's pension, I sold everything Mom left me. The vintage jewelry, the antique furniture, even her car. I wired him $75,000 that same week, the money from selling Mom's things and cashing out the life insurance policy she'd left to me. When the realtor asked whose name should go on the deed, I suggested both of ours. Dad agreed immediately. He even squeezed my hand and said, "You deserve security too, Sabrina. This is your home as much as mine." I believed him. Now I couldn't walk into the living room without feeling like I needed permission. I stood, walked to the closet, and stared at the suitcase tag from a Vegas trip I'd canceled when Dad had his minor heart attack last spring. I knelt down and unzipped the front pocket, and there it was, the manila envelope I'd hidden there months ago, labeled important documents in my mother's careful handwriting. She'd made me promise to keep them safe. Just in case, she'd said, with that knowing look she got near the end. The look I used to hate because it made the future feel real. Inside was the co-ownership deed, Dad's name, and mine, both listed as owners. He'd insisted we do it that way for tax purposes, he'd said, for family protection. But he'd never filed the paperwork to remove my name after the purchase. No rush, he'd said, we're family. I pressed the paper flat on the bed, and something changed. My hands didn't shake anymore. They felt steady. Calm, like they finally remembered what they were for. I picked up my pen and wrote 4 words across the bottom margin, right where my mother's handwriting ended and my reality began. I heard you, Dad. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, his voice replayed, casual and certain, like he'd been practicing it. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen island with lukewarm coffee from our Keurig, pretending my stomach wasn't twisted in knots. Dad shuffled in first, rubbing his eyes like he'd had a rough night. "Morning, kiddo," he mumbled, using the nickname that used to make me feel loved. I couldn't answer, because if I opened my mouth, I didn't trust what would come out. Brenda followed, dressed in her usual athleisure outfit and full makeup, barely glancing at me as she scrolled through Facebook on her phone. I watched them move around the kitchen like nothing had happened, like they hadn't shattered something in me the night before. "You okay?" Dad finally asked. "You look pale." "Just tired," I managed. "Didn't sleep much." "You should try melatonin," Brenda offered without looking up. "Works wonders." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to stand up and ask, "Does melatonin help when your father wants you dead?" Instead, I stirred my coffee and nodded. My eyes drifted to the living room where our Christmas tree twinkled softly. I'd helped decorate it last weekend, hanging Mom's old ornaments, while Brenda complained they didn't match her red and gold theme. I'd bitten my tongue then, like I always did. I was always swallowing the wrong thing to keep the peace. "Can you pick up groceries today?" Dad asked, snapping me back. "Brenda's getting her hair done, and I promised I'd fix the fence." "Sure," I said, like I always did. My voice sounded steady, but inside, something was falling apart, and something else was assembling itself in the wreckage. He looked at me, really looked at me. "You mad about something?" he asked. "You seem different." "Why would I be mad?" I asked. "No reason. You just seem, I don't know, distant." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just need more coffee." He nodded and left for the garage. Brenda didn't say a word, just stood by the fridge eating Greek yogurt, typing with manicured nails clicking against the screen. I wanted to grab that phone and throw it against the wall. Instead, I collected their mugs, washed them in silence, and wiped down counters that were already clean. That's what daughters do, right? We keep moving even when we're breaking. I went upstairs and opened the drawer where I kept important papers, documents I hadn't looked at since moving in. The deed, the co-ownership agreement, the notarized letter from our family lawyer. They'd never filed to remove my name. Dad had said it wasn't necessary. We trusted each other. I stared at my signature, so neat, so trusting, and something cold crawled up my spine. I opened my laptop and logged into the joint checking account I'd set up for household emergencies. I hadn't checked it in months because Dad always said everything was handled. My stomach dropped. Past due notices. From Chase Bank. 3 months behind on the mortgage. 3 months. I stood up so fast my chair spun backward. I opened the banking app on my phone. The joint account I'd been quietly funding for groceries and utilities was nearly empty. Thousands gone. Small withdrawals Dad had made without ever mentioning them. The emergency fund I'd built had become his personal safety net, and I'd been too trusting to notice. Then I heard the front door open downstairs. Dad's voice carried up, too loud and too cheerful for a man who hadn't paid the mortgage. "The new weed trimmer works great, honey," Brenda laughed. "Don't tell Sabrina. She'll worry about the money. She's always upstairs anyway, in her own little world." My hands curled into fists. I crept to the top of the stairs where I could hear them clearly. "That emergency account is completely drained," Dad said. "I checked this morning." "What about her savings?" Brenda asked. "The one she mentioned for Christmas gifts. She barely touches it, still writes checks for everything like her mom used to. Maybe she won't notice if you transfer a little." My blood went cold. "We're only talking about 1,000 or 2, Brenda added, like she was discussing tipping a waitress. "That's not the point," Dad replied. And for half a second, I thought he might show a conscience. "I can't just take my daughter's money." But then he added, "I'll figure something else out." I backed away before they saw me and sat heavily in my desk chair. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I opened my personal savings account, the one I'd kept separate since college. Just over 23,000. Still there, still untouched. Thank God I'd listened to my instincts on that one. I whispered to myself, "You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. They've been using you." How many groceries had I bought, thinking I was helping? How many utility bills had been paid with my money while they spent theirs on weekend trips and new patio furniture? How many times had I quietly covered their shortfalls without even knowing? Then I heard Dad's footsteps on the stairs. A soft knock on my door. "Sabrina," he said gently. "Got a minute?" I turned slowly. He stood in my doorway with that sheepish smile he used when he wanted something. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice level. "What's up?" Brenda and I were thinking, maybe after Christmas we should talk about combining some of our finances, he said. "Streamline things, so nothing falls through the cracks." "Streamline? For who?" "For all of us," he said quickly. "I mean, you've got money just sitting in that savings account. Maybe we should put everything under one umbrella so I can manage it better." The audacity stole my breath. "Manage what?" I asked. "The household finances," he said. "I already handle most of the bills anyway. It just makes sense." I let the silence stretch. He shifted uncomfortably, and I watched him do the thing he always did, turn discomfort into entitlement. I'll think about it, I said finally. But that money is still mine, Dad. Of course, he said too fast. I just meant, I know what you meant, I cut in quietly. Then, softer, so soft he almost didn't hear it. And I heard you. He blinked. Heard what? Nothing, I said. I just need air. I walked past him and down the stairs, out the front door before my body betrayed me with tears. I walked around the neighborhood until my legs ached, trying to calm the storm building in my chest. Every step felt like a countdown, because I wasn't the one falling apart anymore. They were, and they had no idea how close I was to walking away and taking everything with me. When I came back, Dad was watching a game on TV like the world wasn't caving in. Brenda was in the kitchen lighting one of her expensive candles she'd post on Instagram later, pretending scent could cover decay. I went straight to my room and pulled out Mom's envelope again. The one marked Plan B in her careful handwriting. My throat tightened because suddenly I could hear her voice. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, especially with family. Inside was everything. Copies of the deed, letters from our lawyer, a list of account numbers Mom had made me promise to keep separate. Even then, she'd been protecting me, even from Dad. I picked up my phone and called Sandra Martinez, the lawyer Mom and I had used for years. She answered on the second ring. Sabrina, honey, she said, is everything okay? I need to know if the co-ownership papers on Dad's house are still valid, I said. The ones with my name on the deed. She paused. Of course they are, she said carefully. You never signed a release. Your father never filed to remove you. Why are you asking? I sank into my chair and whispered, because they want me dead, Sandra, and they're not even hiding it anymore. Her voice sharpened instantly. Tell me what happened. So I did. I told her about the conversation I overheard. The drained accounts. The mortgage 3 months behind. The plan to take from my savings next. They're not even pretending to care anymore, I finished. Sabrina, she said, firm now, listen to me. You have power here. You are not trapped. What do you want to do? I swallowed. I don't want revenge, I said, and it was the truth. I want out, but I want out on my terms. Then we draft a notice of intent to sell your portion, she replied. I can have it ready by tomorrow. I closed my eyes. Make sure both of them get copies, I said. I want this to hit hard. After we hung up, I opened my suitcase for the first time in over a year, and I started packing. Not in panic, not in fear, with purpose. I folded each piece of clothing carefully, like I was folding away the version of myself that had tolerated too much for too long. One suitcase, my laptop bag, my passport, and the small, brutal calm that comes right before a life changes. I called American Airlines using miles I'd been saving for years. Where will you be flying today, Ms. Carter? The agent asked cheerfully. I didn't hesitate. Paris, I said, one way. And as I zipped the suitcase closed, I heard Dad's knock again, like he could feel the door of my life finally shutting. Sap, he started. But I didn't answer right away, because for the first time since Mom died, I wasn't trying to be good. I was trying to be free. I didn't sleep. Not because I was packing, because the house had a new sound to it once you knew the truth. Every creak in the hallway felt like a decision being made without me. Every muffled laugh downstairs felt like proof that I had been a joke in my own home, my own investment. I lay on the fold-out couch with my passport tucked into the outer pocket of my carry-on like a talisman, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow and steady, as if it was the only thing in this house that still knew how to keep going without pretending. Downstairs, the Christmas tree lights blinked through the cracks beneath my door. A soft, cheerful pulse, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine anymore. When the sun finally lifted itself over Phoenix, I sat up, showered, and dressed in the same neutral outfit I'd worn to job interviews and funerals. Black jeans, a plain sweater, hair pulled back. I looked like someone who wouldn't cause trouble. That was always my best disguise. On the way down, I paused at the landing, listening. Brenda's voice floated up, bright and sharp. If she's going to be moody, she can do it upstairs, she said. I'm not tiptoeing in my own house. My own house. I held onto the banister until the wood bit into my palm. Dad responded in a lower tone, the one he used when he wanted to sound reasonable, like he was trying to convince himself, not her. She's been through a lot, Brenda. That's not my fault, Brenda snapped. And it's not yours either. She's 29. She should be living her own life, not hovering. Hovering. Like a fly. I forced my feet to move, one step at a time. Controlled. Quiet. Like I wasn't carrying a grenade under my ribs. In the kitchen, Dad looked up from his coffee. Morning, he said, too carefully. Brenda didn't look up at all. Her phone was in one hand, a mug in the other. She was already scrolling. I poured myself water instead of coffee. My stomach couldn't handle anything warm. Dad cleared his throat. "So," he said, "about last night. You seemed upset." I leaned against the counter. "Did I?" He blinked. "Sabrina?" There was something in his eyes, an unease, like he could sense I'd stepped onto a different track and the train was already moving. "I'm fine," I said. Brenda gave a small, humorless laugh without lifting her gaze. "Sure." Dad shot her a look. "What?" she said. "I'm just saying, we all feel tense. It's the holidays." The holidays. Like cruelty was seasonal. Dad tried again, softer this time. "You want to talk about anything?" I could have done it right then. I could have said, "I heard you wish I'd die." I could have made the kitchen explode. I could have watched their faces rearrange themselves into denial, outrage, panic. But I didn't want noise. I wanted precision. So I said, "I have some errands." Dad nodded too fast. "Okay, good. Get out. Clear your head." I grabbed my keys. As I turned, Brenda finally looked at me. One slow sweep from my face to my sweater to my hands, like she was searching for proof that I was planning something. Her lips tightened. "Don't forget," she said, "my sister's family is coming for Christmas Eve. So, we need the house looking nice." "We?" I nodded once, a small, obedient motion I'd perfected. Then I walked out the front door. The neighborhood was quiet. Trim lawns, beige houses, wreaths on doors, inflatable Santas swaying in the breeze like they were drunk on cheer. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel until my vision sharpened. Then I drove. Not to the grocery store. To my lawyer. Sandra Martinez's office sat in a low, professional building with tinted windows and a parking lot lined with dusty palms. Walking in felt like crossing a border. Inside, the air conditioning hit my skin like a slap. Everything smelled like paper and toner and time, the kind of place where emotions were translated into documents, where pain became paragraphs. Sandra met me in the lobby with the same careful expression she'd worn at my mother's memorial. She didn't hug me. She didn't soften it. She just said, "Come in." Her office was tidy. Diplomas on the wall. A photo of her and my mother at some charity gala years ago. Mom, smiling, alive. I sat down and the chair felt too firm, like it expected honesty. Sandra opened a folder in front of her. "I pulled everything," she said. "The deed, the co-ownership agreement, your mother's notes." I swallowed. "It's all still valid?" "Yes," she said, voice steady. "You're a legal co-owner. That means you have rights, and they can't ignore you." I let that settle in my chest. Rights. I hadn't felt like I had those in a long time. Sandra slid a paper toward me. "This is a notice of intent to sell your portion. It starts the process. It forces them to respond." I stared at it. The words were clean, formal. No mention of death wishes. No mention of betrayal. Just reality, typed in black ink. And yet it felt like the sharpest thing I'd ever held. Sandra watched me. "Sabrina, are you safe in that house?" I hesitated because the truth was complicated. They hadn't hit me. They hadn't threatened me outright. But they were draining my life in quiet ways. In the way they spoke about me like I wasn't in the room. In the way my father could say he wanted me dead like he was ordering fries. "I'm leaving," I said. Sandra's eyes didn't widen. She just nodded like she'd expected it. "Where?" she asked. I didn't say Paris out loud. Not yet. Saying it made it real. "Away," I said. "Somewhere they can't reach me." Sandra tapped the paper lightly. "Then you do this first. You do it now, before they can try to convince you to sign something or guilt you into staying." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed. Sandra took the paper back and slid a second set toward me. "What's that?" I asked. "A letter to the mortgage company confirming your representation and intent to proceed legally," she said, "and a request that all contact go through my office." I signed that too. Each signature felt like a door clicking shut behind me. Sandra gathered the documents and stood. "I'll email and send certified copies to both of them today." "Today?" I asked. Sandra's mouth tightened. "Sabrina, you heard what you heard. They're already moving. If they think they have time, they'll try to take control. We don't give them time." A rush of adrenaline climbed my throat like bile. "Okay," I whispered. "Do it." Sandra reached into a drawer and handed me a small card. "My cell," she said. "If anything feels wrong, anything, call me. And don't sign a single thing they put in front of you." I nodded and stood, my legs feeling strange, like they belonged to a different version of me. In the parking lot, I sat in my car again and stared at my phone. And that's when I called Ethan. My boyfriend. The one person in my life who didn't treat my love like a resource to be extracted. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, warm, immediate. "You okay?" My throat tightened. because the difference between his voice and my father's voice was devastating. Ethan sounded like someone who wanted me alive. I'm not okay, I admitted. There was a pause. Not confusion, not annoyance, just attention. Where are you? Ethan asked. In a parking lot, I said, and a bitter laugh escaped me, like some cliché woman about to blow up her life. Sabrina, he said, firm now. Tell me what happened. So I did. I told him about the living room door slightly open. The sentence. The way Brenda had backed it like it was normal. The drained joint account. The overdue mortgage. The plan to pull from my savings. And when I finished, I expected him to say something big, something dramatic. Instead, Ethan went quiet for a second. Then he said carefully, You're leaving that house. Not a question. A decision. I already started, I whispered. Good, he said. Come to my place. I closed my eyes. Ethan's apartment wasn't far. 20 minutes. A safe couch, a safe key, a safe man. But something in me refused to slip out like a thief. No, I said softly, and not yet. Ethan exhaled, controlled. Sabrina, I need to do this right, I said. If I leave without setting it in motion, they'll chase me, and they'll rewrite the story. They'll make me the villain. They'll drag me back with guilt and paperwork and family. Ethan's voice softened. You don't owe them anything. I know, I said, but I owe myself an ending that makes sense. Another pause. Then, okay, he said. Then tell me what you need. My chest ached. I swallowed. Stay available. If I call, answer. I will, he said immediately. Always. I hung up and sat there for a moment, letting that word, always, wrap around the part of me that had been starving. Then I drove home. The house looked the same from the outside. Christmas lights, wreath on the door, a little plastic reindeer on the lawn that Brenda insisted was tasteful. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and something sour underneath it. Brenda was in the kitchen when I walked in, a shopping bag on the counter, new decorations. She didn't greet me. Dad's voice came from the living room. The TV was on. He was pretending. I went upstairs, but not before Brenda called out, Did you get groceries? I turned. Not yet. Her eyebrows lifted. Why not? I let my face stay blank. I had something to do. Brenda's smile was thin. Well, make sure you do it. We can't have you forgetting responsibilities. Responsibilities. As if my existence in this house was just unpaid labor. I nodded once and continued upstairs. In my room, I opened my suitcase again and rearranged everything with quiet care. 2 sweaters, 1 coat, comfortable shoes, laptop, passport, legal envelope. I checked my email. Sandra had already sent the notice. Subject line, Notice of Intent to Sell. Sabrina Carter, co-owner. 2 recipients. Dad, Brenda. Sent. Time stamped. My stomach flipped. I stared at that email like it was a match thrown into gasoline. Downstairs, a door slammed. Dad's voice rose, sharp, panicked. What the hell is this? Brenda's voice followed, high and furious. She did this on purpose. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Because this reaction was proof. They weren't shocked that I was hurt. They were shocked that I had teeth. Footsteps thundered on the stairs. Then my door flew open so hard it hit the wall. Dad stood there, face flushed, Sandra's letter in his hand like it was a weapon. Sabrina, he snapped, what is this? I didn't stand. I didn't flinch. I looked up at him from the edge of the bed like I was watching a stranger try to perform fatherhood. It's my answer, I said. His eyes were wild. You can't be serious. You're forcing a sale? Brenda appeared behind him, arms crossed, mouth twisted. You're insane, she said. You're doing this right before Christmas? Dad's voice dropped, pleading now. We can work this out. Money's been tight. Tight? I repeated softly. Dad swallowed. Yes, I didn't want to worry you. I tilted my head. Is that why you drained the joint account? His jaw clenched. It was an emergency. Which one? I asked. The mortgage? The credit cards? Or Brenda's spa weekend in Scottsdale? Brenda's face flashed red. How dare you? How dare I what? I cut in, still quiet. Notice? Listen? Protect myself? Dad's hands shook. Don't do this. We are family. I stared at him. And then finally, I let the truth step out. You stopped treating me like family the night you said my death would be a Christmas gift, I said. Dad's face drained of color. Brenda went still. For a second, the entire house seemed to hold its breath. You! Dad's voice cracked. You heard that? Every word, I said. He looked at Brenda like she was the one who pushed him off a cliff. Brenda lifted her chin. Oh, please, he was venting. Venting, I echoed. Dad stepped forward, lowering his voice, like he could shrink the damage if he whispered. Sabrina, I didn't mean it like that. Yes, I said, and my voice stayed level. You did. His eyes filled, not with love, with fear, because he finally understood something. He couldn't talk his way out of this. He couldn't guilt me into disappearing quietly. I had paperwork. I had a lawyer. I had a plane ticket. And I had the kind of calm that comes when you finally stop hoping someone will become better. Brenda's voice sharpened. Where do you think you're going? I looked at her then, really looked. At the makeup, the perfect hair, the phone in her hand like a shield. And I realized something else. Brenda didn't hate me because I was inconvenient. She hated me because I was evidence. Evidence that my father had once loved someone else more. Evidence that I belonged here before she did. Evidence that this house wasn't fully hers as long as my name sat on that deed. I'm going somewhere you can't reach me, I said. Dad's mouth opened, closed. He looked like a man watching a lifeline snap. We don't have the money to buy you out, he whispered. I nodded slowly. Then you'd better find it, I said, because Plan B is already in motion. Behind them, the Christmas tree lights blinked in the living room, cheerful, mindless, and I thought, with a cold clarity that almost made me smile, they wanted me gone. They just didn't realize I was taking the ground with me. I woke up to screaming. At first, my brain couldn't place it. I was half asleep, wrapped in that thin, restless doze where reality leaks in slowly. Then the sound sharpened, high, panicked, unmistakably Brenda. What do you mean it's shut off? I sat up. The house felt wrong, too quiet. No hum of the fridge, no soft whir of the heater. Even the air felt colder, heavier. Dad's voice followed, strained and frantic. I don't know. I thought I paid it online. I thought... The silence clicked into place like a lock. The power was out. I swung my legs over the side of the couch and checked my phone. December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. I pulled on a sweater and stepped into the hallway. The Christmas tree in the living room was dark. No twinkling lights, no glowing ornaments, no fake fireplace flickering on the TV screen like Brenda loved to stage for Instagram. Just a dead tree. I walked down the stairs slowly, every step deliberate. Brenda was in the kitchen, slamming the refrigerator door over and over like it might magically come back to life. Dad stood near the counter, phone pressed to his ear, face gray. Yes, I understand, he said tightly. Yes, okay. He hung up and rubbed his forehead like he was trying to erase the last 10 minutes. This can't be happening, Brenda snapped. My sister's family is coming tomorrow. What are we supposed to tell them? We'll figure it out, Dad said, though his voice had lost all authority. Just calm down. Calm down? Brenda spun on him. Did you forget to pay the electric bill too? I thought... He stopped himself when he saw me standing there. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was already lighting the room better than electricity ever could. You thought what? I asked quietly. Dad swallowed. I thought maybe you'd handled it this month. I nodded once, like I was confirming a detail in a story I already understood. No, I said, not anymore. Brenda's eyes narrowed. You can't just stop paying bills without warning people. I tilted my head. You mean like how you stopped including me in this family months ago? Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad ran a hand through his hair. You're really doing this? Right before Christmas? I looked at him. Really looked. At the man who had raised me. The man who had cried into my shoulder when Mom died. The man who had told me my presence was exhausting. Who had wished me dead like it was a stocking stuffer. You told me to disappear, I said calmly. This is me disappearing. Quietly. Responsibly. Just like you wanted. Brenda scoffed. Don't be dramatic. I walked to the counter and picked up a plate of Christmas cookies I'd baked the night before. For the neighbors. Chocolate chip. Soft in the middle. Just the way Mom used to make them. I set the plate down gently. You made your choice, I said. I'm making mine. Dad's voice cracked. What are we supposed to tell people? They'll ask where you went. I paused at the bottom step. Tell them the truth, I said. That some gifts come with a price, and you finally ran out of credit. Upstairs, I finished packing. 2 sweaters, 1 good coat, comfortable shoes for walking, laptop, passport, legal documents tucked safely into my bag. I moved slowly, methodically, not because I was afraid they'd stop me, but because I wanted to remember this version of myself. The woman who didn't beg. The woman who didn't explain herself into nothing. Around 3 in the afternoon, while Dad and Brenda argued in the garage in sharp, exhausted bursts, I crept downstairs one last time. I placed small, wrapped gifts under the dark Christmas tree, one for each of my younger cousins who'd be visiting. Simple things. Books. Art supplies. Inside each, a note in my handwriting. Love always. None of this is your fault. I straightened the tags so they looked intentional, like I hadn't vanished in the night. Then I went back upstairs and waited. At 4 a.m., I rolled my suitcase down the stairs as quietly as possible. The house slept like it didn't know it was already over. I paused at the front door, hand on the knob. For a moment, I thought about waking Dad, about giving him one last chance to say something human, something apologetic, something real. But then I remembered his voice, casual, certain, and I let the moment pass. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. Snow drifted down, thin and improbable for Phoenix, like the universe had decided to break character just for me. I stood on the front steps and looked back at the house one last time. The Christmas tree sat dark in the window. That was their Christmas. Mine was waiting. At Sky Harbor Airport, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I checked in without hesitation. "Where will you be flying today, Ms. Carter?" the agent asked. "Paris," I said, "one way." I didn't cry on the flight. Not when the plane lifted off. Not when the captain announced our descent. Not even when the woman beside me asked if I was visiting family. "No," I said, pressing my lips into a small smile. I left them behind. Charles de Gaulle was loud and bright and indifferent to my story, and that felt like mercy. I met Claire, one of my mother's old college friends, just outside baggage claim. She hugged me once, tight, no questions, and handed me a set of keys. "Stay as long as you need," she said. I meant it when I thanked her. The guest apartment was small and warm. I unpacked just enough to feel real. 2 drawers, half the closet. I made tea, opened the window, let the city breathe into me. That evening, I walked along the Seine with my coat zipped to my chin. The air cut sharp, but it made me feel alive. My phone buzzed nonstop. "Dad, Brenda." Dad again. Voicemails, texts, missed calls stacked like accusations. I didn't open any of them. I already knew what they said. The next morning, an email from Sandra waited for me. Subject line, "You might want to read this." She'd forwarded a frantic message from the mortgage company. "The property is in foreclosure. We are facing imminent eviction proceedings." Dad had written, "Sabrina Carter is not responding. She must be traveling for work. She's not part of the decision-making process anymore." Sandra's reply was brief. "Sabrina Carter remains a legal co-owner and is well within her rights." I read it twice. Then I turned my phone face down on the cafe table and watched Paris wake up around me. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was finally choosing where my life would take place. 3 days into Paris, the quiet stopped feeling empty and started feeling intentional. I learned the rhythm of the street outside Claire's apartment, the bakery opening before sunrise, the metallic rattle of delivery carts on cobblestone, the way voices rose and fell without ever asking me to explain myself. No one here knew my history. No one here needed me to be useful. That alone felt radical. I sat at a corner cafe with my laptop closed and my phone face down, steam curling up from a cup of coffee I hadn't paid for in years with guilt attached. The urge to flip the phone over came and went in waves. Habit is stubborn. It whispers that silence is dangerous, that if you don't respond, something worse will happen. But worse had already happened. Worse had happened in a living room with a half-open door and a sentence said without shame. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I let it buzz. It rang again, immediately. Persistent. Professional, I answered. "Ms. Carter?" a man asked. "This is First National Bank regarding a co-owned property currently in arrears." His tone was careful, trained to be neutral while standing on a cliff. "Yes," I said, "I'm aware. We've received a legal filing indicating your intent to sell," he continued. "We need to confirm your intentions moving forward." "My lawyer will handle everything," I said calmly. "Please direct all communication to her office." There was a pause, the kind where someone flips pages and recalculates leverage. "Ms. Carter," he said, "are you aware the other party has expressed severe difficulty meeting payment obligations?" I looked out the window at a woman tying her scarf against the cold, her life moving forward without me in it. "Yes," I said, "I'm aware." "And you still wish to proceed?" "Yes." Another pause, then softer. "Very well." When the call ended, I didn't feel powerful. I felt steady. That afternoon, Ethan called. I answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said, "I was starting to worry you'd fallen into the Seine." A small laugh escaped me. "Not yet." "You okay?" he asked. I considered the question, not the automatic answer, the real one. "I am," I said. "I think I really am." He exhaled, like he'd been holding something back. "They've been blowing up your phone." "I know. Do you want me to screen anything for you, or tell them to stop?" "No," I said gently. "If they want to talk, they can talk to my lawyer." Silence on the line, then. "I'm proud of you." The word landed unexpectedly. Proud, not relieved, not impressed. Proud. Thank you, I said. That night, I finally listened to one voicemail. Dad's. His voice was hoarse, rushed, stripped of its authority. Sabrina, please, we need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. Brenda's panicking. The bank is calling. We just need some time. I know I said things I shouldn't have. I stopped it there, because even now it was things. Not a wish, not a sentence, not a choice. Just things. I deleted it. The next message was from Brenda, texted instead of called. She preferred control in writing. You've humiliated us. Everyone knows something's wrong. Do you have any idea what you've done? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted that too. I wasn't interested in their version of events anymore. The following morning, Sandra emailed again. Subject update. They were begging to negotiate. The words felt surreal, like reading about someone else's life. The people who had treated me like a nuisance now needed my signature. The people who assumed I'd always step in were discovering what happens when the floor drops out. Sandra added a single line beneath the summary. Tell me when you're ready. I closed the laptop and walked. Across bridges. Past bookstores. Along streets where the buildings leaned in like they were sharing secrets I didn't need to understand. For the first time in years, my thoughts weren't about managing someone else's emotions. They weren't about smoothing conflict or anticipating the next financial emergency. They were small thoughts. What to cook? Which street to explore next? Whether I liked my coffee better, bitter, or sweet. That night, I made a list on the back of a receipt. 2 columns. What they took. Time. Money. Holidays. My voice. My sense of home. What I have left. Self-respect. Legal control. A passport. Proof I'm not imagining things. Paris. The second list was shorter, but it felt heavier in the right way. At midnight, another call came through. Unknown number again. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. Ms. Carter, a woman said this time, this is the foreclosure department. We're required to inform you that eviction proceedings may begin if arrears are not resolved. I understand, I said. You're aware this will significantly impact the other occupants? I thought of the dark Christmas tree, the slammed fridge, the entitlement that had eaten through everything. Yes, I said again, I am. After the call, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the weight of it settle. This wasn't revenge. Revenge would have felt loud. This felt clean. I texted Sandra one sentence before I could overthink it. Proceed, I'm ready. Outside, Paris hummed on, uninterested, unconcerned, alive. And for the first time since my mother died, I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I was waiting for the next chapter. I waited until January 2nd to send the letter. Not out of kindness, out of clarity. Christmas has a way of blurring lines, turning bad behavior into stress, turning cruelty into family tension. I wanted the holidays to pass without my words being diluted by wrapping paper and excuses. I wanted them to sit in that house, cold, dim, and uncertain, wondering if I was ever coming back. Uncertainty, I'd learned, was the one thing they couldn't manage. I wrote the letter by hand at the small desk by the window, Paris waking slowly outside. No anger in my grip, no shaking, just clean lines on simple stationery I bought from a corner shop that smelled like ink and dust. I didn't threaten. I didn't accuse. I documented. I listed every dollar I had contributed, every temporary loan that never came back, every utility bill I'd quietly covered, the $75,000 down payment, the joint account I funded and they drained, the months I paid while they pretended things were handled. Then I wrote about the night I overheard them. I quoted the sentence exactly. Not dramatically, not emotionally. Precisely. Because truth doesn't need decoration. I ended with a paragraph that took me the longest to write, not because it was hard, but because it was final. This house was a gift. So was I. You lost both. You may refinance the mortgage independently or accept the sale and downsize. Either way, I am done covering for people who see me as a burden to be managed. Consider this your final Christmas gift. I sealed the envelope, paid for express delivery, and let it go. 3 days later, Dad called. 3 times in one afternoon. I ignored the first, ignored the second, answered the third. What were you thinking? He snapped, skipping any attempt at warmth. Mailing this like some kind of legal threat? It wasn't a threat, I said calmly. It was a record. You humiliated us, he said. You gave us no choice. You had choices, I replied. You just didn't think I'd ever stop choosing you. Silence. Then his voice cracked, not into remorse, but into panic. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? I looked out the window at the narrow street below. A woman locking her bike, a man carrying bread under his arm like the world was still intact. I gave you exactly what you asked for, I said. I disappeared. You blindsided us, Sabrina, he said. We're your family. No, I said softly. You just weren't paying attention. I hung up before he could answer. That evening, Brenda sent one final message. You've destroyed us. I read it twice, then deleted it. Because their destruction wasn't my doing. It was their entitlement, their manipulation, their certainty that I'd keep giving no matter how cruel they became. My only crime was finally saying no. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened the small journal I'd been keeping since arriving in Paris. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote one word. Freedom. And underneath it, smaller, steadier. It doesn't ask permission. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across my walls. Somewhere across an ocean, a house sat with overdue bills and a darkened tree. Here, my window was bright, and for the first time in years, so was my future. The house sold in March. Not dramatically, not with shouting or courtroom theatrics, just signatures, deadlines, and numbers lining up the way they always should have. Sandra handled everything. I stayed in Paris. That distance mattered more than I expected, not just geographically, but emotionally. It meant I didn't hear my father's voice crack in real time when the sale became inevitable. I didn't watch Brenda pace the kitchen, recalculating which version of herself would survive next. I didn't absorb their panic like secondhand smoke. I read about it instead. Objective, clean. Debts cleared, remaining equity divided, downsizing required. After the mortgage arrears, penalties, and late fees were paid, what was left was enough for a small apartment and a fresh start, as Sandra phrased it. Fresh starts always sound optimistic when they're forced. The extended family found out in fragments. There were confused calls from relatives who didn't know which story to believe. I didn't correct them. I didn't explain. I learned something important during those weeks. People who never protected you don't deserve full access to your truth. The kids adapted the fastest. They always do. Children have a way of accepting reality as it is instead of arguing with what it should have been. I heard through Claire that my cousins liked their new place. Smaller, closer together, fewer rules about what could and couldn't be touched. I felt relief at that. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. Mostly I felt quiet. Paris had become mine in small ways. I found work teaching English to business professionals, early mornings, strong coffee, conversations about contracts, and presentations instead of family drama. I rented a small apartment in the 11th arrondissement with windows that faced east toward the morning sun. I learned which bakery saved the warm baguettes for later in the day, which cafe didn't rush me if I sat too long with a single cup, which streets felt safest when I walked alone at night with my coat collar turned up. People here knew me simply as Sabrina, not someone's daughter, not an emergency fund, not a problem to manage. Just a woman living her life. Ethan visited in April. He stood in my doorway with a crooked smile and said, "So this is the place where you disappeared to." I corrected him gently. "No," I said, "this is where I showed up." He stayed a week. We didn't talk much about my father. We didn't need to. He saw it in the way I moved now, how I didn't flinch when my phone buzzed, how I no longer apologized for needing space, how my laughter came easier, fuller. On his last night, he held my hand and said, "You know you didn't overreact, right?" I nodded. I know. That knowledge felt earned. Sometimes, late at night, when Paris went quiet and the streetlights cast long shadows across my walls, I thought about that Christmas tree. Dark, unplugged, sitting in their window like a symbol they never meant to create. Not with regret, with understanding. My father thought breaking me would make his life easier, that I'd shrink myself until I fit whatever space he and Brenda left. What he never understood, what neither of them understood, was that I wasn't just a convenience. I was a foundation, and when you remove a foundation, things collapse. People might say I was too harsh. That family should forgive and forget. That blood is thicker than boundaries. But I learned something important in that guest room in Phoenix. Love isn't measured by how much you give until there's nothing left of you. It's measured by what you refuse to sacrifice. I didn't walk away from them. I walked toward myself. And the greatest gift that Christmas wasn't my death. It was my life. Finally. Completely. Undeniably mine.